Hi, how are you doing today, Yousif?
Yeah, really good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm very good, thanks. So today we're just going to chat about your journey into cybersecurity. But before we get the ball rolling, please can you tell us a bit about your military history and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. I joined the British Army in 1998, a long time ago. I served for 10 years. Within those 10 years, I served within the Household Cavalry. So no technical background. Cyber wasn't even a thing I would have thought about at the time. Yeah, so like I said, did various courses, various deployments, and then left in very beginning of 2008.
Okay. What was the reason for you leaving?
So I knew that I'd reached the end of how long I wanted to serve. Very grateful for the time in the military. Really loved being in the Household Cavalry, but I got to a point where I just got married. My wife was pregnant, and I just thought, I need to do something. I need to change something. And at the time, a lot of people were heading out to the Middle East and to do private security. So that's what I did. So I left the military, kind of stayed within that bubble for a few years. So went out to Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, various places doing private security.
Okay, that's incredible. So then why did you shift from private security into cyber? What was that
Yeah, so after a good few years of doing that and sort of bouncing around lots of interesting and dangerous places, I sort of I had a bit of a moment where I thought, well, I can't do this forever. What is my skill set? What am I interested in? All of these sort of things, and it was a bit of a fork in the road sort of situation where I thought, well, I kind of need to do something quite dramatic in terms of my skill set, my knowledge, my understanding, if I want to go and have a sort of quote unquote normal life. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with private security and military, and people stay in these their whole careers, and that's absolutely fine. I think when I came back to the UK, I started working for a quite wealthy private family, and at the time they were like, "Yeah, really happy with our physical security, really happy with how everything's going. What about our digital security? What about all of our digital assets that we have, that we store, etc." And then this person was an early adapter of cryptocurrency, so they had quite a big online portfolio. And at the time, I just remember thinking, no idea, don't ask me. But that was the catalyst, like because it was really difficult to you've been I was in the military from 16, and then I stayed in that military bubble carrying out security. It just wasn't a thing. It wasn't something that I thought, I can naturally move into. And so yeah, I started looking online, started researching, did various training courses, and then I made the decision, right, this is what I want to do. I enjoy it. There's very similar to the military in quite a lot of respects. So it's sort of like the mindset you have to be in, and things like that. And then I managed to leave security completely behind, or physical security, and then moved into the corporate world as an information security.
that's quite a shift. And one of the questions that I saw, and I know that a lot of veterans and service leavers wanting to like go into this industry is to talk about the courses. And you mentioned a few that you did. What courses were those?
Yeah, so cybersecurity and information security is a really wide subject. Okay, so when people turn around and think, oh, cybersecurity, they think it's all packaged up into one area. But you can be, anything from sort of offensive cybersecurity, so like your ethical hacking and penetration testing, all the way through to say information security as a whole, which is your policies and procedures and sort of the compliance side of it, right? And everything in between. It was there was a moment where I thought, oh, do you know what? I am not technical. I haven't come from a technical background. I think the limit of my computer usage was Facebook at the time, and I still thought like, yeah, there's like 14-year-old kids hacking the CIA. That's not me, right? So I looked at different routes in, right? And the biggest challenge, if I'm honest, when we're talking about courses and things like that, is it's a completely different language. Like you're learning a different language, not just the civilian terminology and the corporate terminology, but also really understanding what those jobs are and what they do. So an initial period for me was, hammering things like YouTube, right? Great resource. I can't say it enough. It's free. There's so much information on there, and you don't feel stupid asking a computer, what does this mean, what is that, show me a video on this. And then I started to build up that knowledge around knowing roughly what area of cybersecurity, information security I wanted to go into. And then one of the first courses I did was the ISO 27001 lead implementer, which is essentially it's an information security management system, so a framework, internationally recognized certification for businesses to achieve. And basically what it does is it puts things in boxes, right? So, we've got policies, we've got procedures, we've got all these things that enable us to get better at managing our information security risk. And actually, I did that course, and I remember sort of turning up on day one of that course thinking, I haven't got it. This isn't me, right? I don't understand it. I met various other people on the course. All these other people had been, within IT or cyber for years, and they were talking this different language, and I just remember thinking, God, I don't know if I made the right decision. And then as it starts to unfold, you realise it's just another version of risk management that you've been applying since you were 16. Okay, so it's just another version. And I think what's key to point out for these for military veterans and military leavers, a huge amount of terminology now in the corporate world is taken from the military. So when we're talking about things like attack surface, we're talking about those vulnerable points, vulnerability. It all has some kind of grounding in the military. Actually, being able to apply my military background to information security suddenly started to click, where actually these people that had worked in IT or cyber for a long time weren't getting it. And it was something as simple as, we're talking about, from a military perspective, you're looking after a convoy from point A to point B and you want to protect it along that route. Well, in cyber now we're talking about encryption, right? So it's the same, so sending, let's say, an email from point A to point B is the same as a convoy going from point A to point B. You've got the same concerns security-wise, right? So it was being able to apply that. So I did that course, passed that course, then did my data protection officer course. So learning the regulatory side, so understanding about data protection, GDPR, things like that. So I'm starting to build this, I suppose, a holistic view of protecting data, right? So not just from bad actors and cyber attackers, but also how to be legal, how to make sure we're doing the right thing. And then, so then I got my first job off the back of those two qualifications in an insurance company. But so that kind of progressed, and then I did, much harder courses, much deeper courses, and eventually went on to things like CISM and CISP and Certified Ethical Hacker, and all of these sort of courses that, actually they all start with these fundamentals and, understanding, from the military again, you kind of go, well, yeah, I'm used to this environment of learning as well. And I think that's something that the military community do so well. They'll go on a 2-week course and they will hammer that 2-week course, complete new knowledge, huge knowledge intake, do an exam, and then they'll go back to their unit being a subject matter expert in that thing they've only learned for 2 weeks. But again, that's not normal learning for normal people. So I think that's how it goes. So that's the sort of roots and the qualifications that I...
Brilliant. And I mean, you mentioned about there's a bit of this crossover with your military background and the things that you've experienced in the military and what you've seen now, cyber. What other aspects of your military experience do you felt helps you now succeed in cyber? Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, all of the fundamentals you learn in the military, all of the things that you maybe at the time think, God, what's the point of doing this? Or, I feel like I'm being treated like a bit of a child or whatever it is. It's all building things like that are crucial for the real world. I say real world and I say normal people a lot, right? But I think that's going to be, I think people will understand that from the military community. Yeah, so self-confidence. I think, when I was operating in a boardroom, so I'd got to a senior level, I was talking to the CEOs, presenting. We've done that sort of stuff since we were 16. You've given a set of orders, you've stood in front of your peers, you've instructed, you've talked in public, and those things at the time you think that's just part of the job, it's just normal. A huge portion of normal people don't have that exposure, so they're not comfortable. That was a huge confidence builder for me, is the fact that we were confident. You would never go into something if you weren't 100% prepared. I think there is, and this is definitely not sort of the military here and the civilian world here. There are some amazing people. I've met better people. I've met different people in the civilian world than I was in the military. But I think that fear that you grow up with in the military, where you've got a sergeant major or you've got someone that if you're not prepared and you turn up on that day, is not going to be happy, right? And that's different. That's different in civilian world, but you still have that mindset where I've got a meeting with the CEO at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have everything done. Not only that, I'm going to prepare for all of the points that he or she is going to pick out, and have an answer for that. So I think that from the military as well, that's been huge, like running on that fear of getting it wrong, right? One of the final things that's really a sort of a really good trait that we have in the military is that humility, being able to, remove your ego or have no ego. And like we said at the beginning, every day is a school day, right? So you're always learning. I think that what I've come across in the civilian world as well is people are fearful to be a bit vulnerable and say, I don't get that, but give me to the end of the day and I'll figure it out, whereas that you're sort of always judged on your authenticity in the military, aren't you? So
Yes, so yeah.
it's going, do you know what, you may think I should know that answer, but I don't, but I'm not going to try and bluff you and lie to you about it. I'll go and figure it out and come back to you.
Yeah, and I mean it's something that I've seen in our other interviews, and somebody else, there's a saying, is you don't put your head above the parapet, you put your head down and you do what needs to get done. And the humility is a big thing that I've seen working with veterans and service leavers, and working with Ben now for the past 3 months. It's a big aspect of all of this that I've been learning, that it's really admirable. It's a little bit inspiring, I guess, from someone like not even a British civilian, but from someone who's in a completely different country, who has zero military background. It's been incredible. And I suppose that's a nice little segue as to how you overcame any challenges that you may have faced. Like, I know with your first course, you're a little bit unsure, but how did you overcome it even after your courses and moving into the civilian world? How did you overcome any challenges that you may have faced?
Yeah, I think again, for the military, you break everything down into sort of tangible chunks of what you can and what you can't, right? And a huge thing and again, depending on what cat badge you were, depending on what your background was, we're not necessarily natural learners. We don't know how to learn. We don't, we're very vocational. We're very physical in that aspect. Like, show me, then I'll practice, then I'll do, repetition and what have you, right? So I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced was learning how to learn. As ridiculous as that may sound, especially when I went on to do my master's, it was, okay, so I'd never been to university, I'd never done anything purely academic like that. And actually, when you sit down and you go through it, I think it was, you get your reading list, multiple books and things like that. And, for that semester or that term, I was trying to get through like 500-page books and, frying my brain. And then somebody who is a civilian just turned around and said, why are you doing that? You learn how to learn, right? If the question relates to this chapter or this book, just read that. And then in your own time, after you've done that, go back and read the whole thing and get a thorough understanding, or just research this, or just, and you're like, oh yeah, I had no idea how to learn. That makes sense. I'm not painting a good picture of myself here, am I? But yeah, so that was a challenge, and I think that military mindset of, I'm not going to fail at this. I'm going to pass this, and I'll do everything I can to pass this. And I've seen that on various courses and various things since then, where people have got halfway through something and gone, nah, it's not for me. Where I think there's a bit of a pride thing for ex-military as well. You think, well, I may get to the end of this, hate it so much, I'll never do this as a job, but I'm going to pass this course. I'm going to get this done. And then actually, by completing the course, you go, well, actually, that all makes sense, and I quite enjoy that, and then you go on to the next one.
Yeah. Any other challenges, maybe, in a work scenario from a civilian perspective? What else did you?
I had to calm down. I don't mean that aggressively. I don't mean that in any kind of way like that. But I think it was a case of, look, and this is why cyber is a good fit for veterans as well, because when a problem happens at, say, 10 to 5, you don't go, I'll pick it up tomorrow at 5 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, sorry, and go home at 5. You work the problem, you work the solution, right? And that's what we're completely used to. But I think leading up to an incident or something happening, if it was just a normal, and let's say on a Monday, you've got your week mapped out, you've got the amount of work you need to do. Well, then in my head at the time, it was a case of going, right, I'll crunch through this as fast as I can, I'll get it done. And you think, well, just calm down. calm down a bit, and just do the work, do it well. And, no one's expecting you. Again, that hangover from the military is, well, if I finish my week's work on Thursday instead of Friday, that's really good. Well, it's not. They'll just give you they'll give you a week and a half's work to do in a week. So, learn to calm down, learn to get the job done, but done well. And I think that was one of the big.
Okay, amazing. And then a slight little move on from that. What military skills did you find helped you? Like, did any take you by surprise that you implemented either subconsciously or consciously moving into civvy streets?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably little bits from all of it, right? But I think when I moved into management, I think that was the difference. And I think, at the time, maybe, you look back on the military and you may have met like a corporal who was really good, really inspiring, and then you met somebody else who was a complete idiot and, whatever. And you start to take those good bits of that, from each of those people, right? And I think the military excel in management, not as a whole, but, you've been managing people with that quite a lot of the time without even knowing it, right? And knowing what motivates people and knowing how to get the best out of people. And I think that was a really good thing that I took from the military, especially when I went into management, which was, again, water it down a bit. You're not stood there at, checking your watch, where have you? Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But it was a case of understanding people, understanding their home life, understanding their circumstances, what their drivers are, and how to get the best out of them. That came from the military.
That's the first time I've heard of that. That's great. I love that. Really, and then you mentioned earlier that cyber is a really good space for veterans to move into. Why is that? Can maybe is it?
Yeah, I mean, again, so I won't say sort of flexible working environment really, because it depends what company you go and work for. I know that companies are 100% remote, and as long as the work is done, I don't care if you're there at 9 or if you're there at 10, like all the way through to people who are in the office. So I don't think it's that. I think it's the fundamentals that we learn in the military and the concepts that we grasp and the language and our view on stuff, right? So again, take one thing from the military. You always expect to be attacked. You always expect to be contacted. So any patrol you go on, let's say in Afghanistan or where, you're expecting it, and you have 3 plans in place for when something happens. That's not normal, right? That's not normal, right? So, but it's invaluable, because that's cybersecurity. You have to start every day assuming that you're going to get attacked or an incident or something's going to happen, and have those backup plans. Right, if this happens at this point, this is what we're going to do. And actually everything you go through, say, for incident response, it's documented, it's trained, it's refined. So all of these things, like, it's just second nature for the military, more than any other job. I think I see a lot of veterans that go into things like project management and things like that. Great careers, absolutely, but it's still something that's not really ingrained in you. Almost, it's something that you learn and you get better at, and you progress with. But I think, for me, for cyber, yes, there's a huge amount of technical understanding that you need to get to grips with as it progresses. But the fundamentals are: if this happens at this point, what do you do, and where's your plan? Where's your team? And those are the things from 16. You're like, it's just second nature, right?
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned now about progression as well. Do you believe, like, because I know one of the big things for service leavers and for veterans as a whole is progression in civvy streets. It's really a key part of their success and their happiness after leaving the service. Do you believe that there's, like, cybersecurity offers that mappable progression that they can work towards?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple roles within cybersecurity, and you can start as an analyst. You can start, depending on how technical you want to go, or your experience that you've gathered, all the way through to board level, to like a senior exec or C-suite. But I think the reality is when you leave the military, you have to have an understanding in your head that if you're going into something new, you're starting something new. And remove the arrogance, learn, because you've got to understand that like every job, there are people that are doing roles now, and just because they haven't flown up that rank structure, so to speak, doesn't mean that they're not capable. It just means that they're happy doing what they're doing. And that's like a mind shift. Don't look at someone and go, "Oh, I've been a cyber analyst for 10 years," and you go, "Shouldn't you be a bit higher?" No, they're perfectly happy. But you know what? I bet they're amazing at that job. When you start to sort of go into these roles, there is absolute progression. But understand that not everyone wants progression. So you will like progress fast, but don't be tempted to take that next step until you know what you're doing, because you'll get found out quite easily. So I think it's a case of learn from the people around you. Zero arrogance. Do not take any sort of arrogance in there, because, like I say, that person's been doing that for probably before you join the military. That one job or that one task, and they're so good at it. They know all the shortcuts around it. They know all of the information behind it. Learn from them, and then once you've got that,
Amazing.
progress again.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
here's the thing
So I
as
was,
well.
yeah,
Here's the thing as well. Sorry to interrupt that.
no,
Because the next thing is, you're probably going to be their manager. So if you don't know what you're talking about to someone that's been there for 10 years, their humility.
yeah. So that was actually going to be my next question about the top 3 tips or actionable tips that you want to give veterans and service leavers wanting to go into the space to succeed, which I think you've covered, unless you want to add a little bit more or go into a little bit more again.
I think the only other thing that I would say is cybersecurity can be as exciting or as boring as you as a person makes it, right? So don't look at it and think, well, they're paying really well, I'm going to do that. Because if you haven't got an interest in it, if it's something that doesn't captivate your interest in that, it's a long road. So I would say definitely take the time at the start, go on YouTube, go on Udemy, go on all these like, either no cost or extremely low cost, and just feel it out. Start to understand it, start to picture it, and if you get to the end of that and go, that's not for me, that's fine. But if you get to the end of it and go, I don't really get it, but I enjoy it, then progress. So I'll add one more thing to it actually. Find a mentor, right? And there is nothing, that whole sort of there's no stupid question. There is no stupid questions when you're learning, right? And I think if you can find someone that's done it or is doing it at that level, and someone, that I've got a couple of friends that decided to make that shift into cyber, and I've helped mentor them, and as cheesy as that sounds, I don't mean that to sound like that, but I've helped, point them to the right course, and we've had a conversation in the evening to say, right, you didn't get that, but I get this, and having that mentor in that place that you want to get to is critical. It's like a gym training buddy, right? You want to train with someone that's stronger and fitter, and it's the same thing. But I'm on the Redeployable platform as well. I've put myself down as a
Brilliant.
mentor, so anyone that wants to reach out, ask any questions, I'm more than happy to help.
That's amazing. Maybe if you can just unpack a little bit of what exactly the cybersecurity space entails. I know one of your top tips is for service leavers to research, but maybe just a few top points about what it entails so that they can know what to expect when they do their research and courses.
Yeah, sure. So many different jobs, right? I mean, you can specialize in just firewalls, right, all the way through to whatever. But I think the best route for military veterans with limited or evolving technical ability is around that sort of information security manager role, because what that is it's a mix of bit of a technical understanding. So you need to be able to go to the cyber teams and the technical teams and say, look, I know this is what you're doing. I know, you may be undertaking this one task, but I know how you should be doing that to meet regulatory environment, to meet safety, security. Could I jump on a keyboard and do it for you? Probably not at that time. However, but I know the steps you should be going through. So I understand what you're doing, and this is how we're going to protect that, put that wrap around it. And on the different side of that, you're looking at the policies, the processes. You're sort of building that information security ecosystem, because I think what is quite important to point out is some of the most rogue people you'll come across for security in an organization are the IT department. People that you would think are, absolutely, but they're not, right? So the IT teams and the IT department is fantastic at what they do, but they're there to make something work, get it online, get it used by the company, right? So no issue. And security starts to fall by the wayside when we increase speed. So having that sort of being able to wrap those your arms around each department and say, like HR, like I know you're asking for lots of CVs from candidates. What are you doing with them? Because if we have a data breach or if that gets leaked, we've got all that information. So it's kind of like building that security platform around the company. So information security manager, I think, is the best route for veterans, because it's a huge amount of risk management and some technical understanding.
Thank you.